We tend to think of cruise ships as floating cities of laughter, music, and sun-soaked days at sea. But what if behind the midnight buffets and ocean views, something darker lurked? What if the ship's corridors held more than just echoes of footsteps? What if someone or something never disembarked? Just promise me this. Watch until the end. Because one of these stories still has no logical explanation, and it might make you rethink ever stepping on a cruise ship again. When Ethan boarded the cruise ship Elysian Star for a 5-day escape through the Caribbean, he was trying to get away from everything. His job, his messy breakup, and most of all, his silence. You see, Ethan hadn't spoken to his younger sister Ava in 2 years. The guilt followed him, even across the ocean. The first 2 days were exactly what he needed: cocktails, sunlight, and mindless chatter. But on the third night, something changed. He woke up at 3:13 a.m. Not to noise, not to movement, to presence. His cabin felt cold. Not the type of cold that makes your skin shiver, the kind that sits in your bones. He turned over in his bed and swore he saw someone standing at the foot of it, but the lights flicked on suddenly, and no one was there. The cruise staff told him it was likely sleep paralysis. Happens all the time on the water, they said, but here's where it gets disturbing. Later that day, Ethan took a photo of the hallway outside his cabin. He wanted to post it with a dumb caption about getting lost on the ship. But when he looked at the photo, in the far left corner, mostly obscured by the wall, was Ava, or someone who looked just like her. Her eyes were open wide, her mouth slightly parted, and her clothes were soaked. But Ava had never been on that cruise. She was hundreds of miles away, or so he thought. Back in 2012, a 28-year-old woman named Grace boarded a ship alone. She told her friends it was her healing journey, a symbolic start after the tragic death of her fiancé, Marco, the year before. Every night, she'd walk the decks at sunset. She wore a soft white shawl and always had her earbuds in, always listening to the same playlist Marco made for her. One evening, just after 10 p.m., passengers in the cabin next to hers reported strange noises, not loud banging or shouting, but whispers, as if someone was pleading quietly, urgently. Security checked. Her cabin was empty, her bed made, lights off, but the balcony door unlocked and gently swaying in the ocean breeze. The search lasted all night. The next morning, her body was found floating miles from the ship, untouched by sharks or boats. Face peaceful, still wearing her shawl. But the most chilling part? When investigators opened her phone, they found an unsent draft, a text message never sent. It said, "He's here. I know it's him. Marco's here." There was no cell service on the ship, no Wi-Fi in her cabin, and her phone had been on airplane mode. How did she write it? Or who typed it? Julian was a maintenance crew member on the cruise ship Azure Harmony. His shifts rotated between engine maintenance, waste disposal, and night inspections. He didn't mind the odd hours, less people to talk to. One night, Julian was making his rounds when he heard a sound on the lower level. A part of the ship closed the guests. The sound was unmistakable, splashing, followed by muffled gasps, like someone struggling in water. When he reached the hallway, the sound stopped, and the floor was dry. Julian radioed his supervisor, but they told him to finish his rounds and log the incident. Over the next week, it happened again. Every night, around 2:40 a.m., the same sound, splashing, gasps, choking, and then silence. He started recording the sound on his phone, and every morning it would be gone, his files wiped clean. Finally, on the 8th night, he stayed there with his phone ready, eyes wide open. The sound started again, this time louder, more desperate. He held the phone up to record, but then something new happened. The lights blew out, pitch black. When they came back on, less than a minute later, the walls were dripping, not leaking, dripping, as if submerged and pulled out too fast. The captain later told him something that shook him. The ship used to be part of a fleet that suffered a mass drowning during a freak storm. Below Deck 3, that used to be part of the Morgue section in the rescue days. Julian quit the same night. He refuses to go near water even now. There's a theory among cruise ship staff, unofficial of course, that when the backup lights flash red during a drill, someone who's not supposed to be on board has arrived. There's no protocol for this, no announcement, but older staff members swear by it. Lucy, a former event coordinator, remembers it well. During a mock evacuation drill, the lights failed and then turned an eerie red, casting everything in crimson shadows. People laughed at first, until one child asked, "Who's the man standing by the pool?" The pool was closed, and the security footage showed nothing. No man, no child, no guests even near the pool. But Lucy remembered the child's face. How pale she looked, how her lip trembled. That child was found 3 hours later, inside the ship's maintenance corridor, curled up, eyes wide, whispering, "He followed me here." She was airlifted off the ship and treated for acute shock. Ethan couldn't shake the image of Ava from his hallway photo. He searched his messages, wondering if maybe she had reached out. Maybe it was a coincidence, a look-alike. But buried in his spam folder was an email sent 3 days before he boarded. It was from Ava's friend. Subject line, "Please call me. It's about Ava." Ava had gone missing during a hiking trip, fell near a river. No body found, just her backpack. That meant she was gone before he ever set sail. So what was on the ship with him? And why did it look so much like her? When Ethan returned home, he posted about his experience in a forum. A man replied saying, "You're not the first to see her. Cabin 3294, right?" That was Ethan's exact room. He never replied to the comment. He moved inland, far from oceans. But sometimes in the stillness of night, he dreams of cold air, a dripping hallway, and the look in Ava's eyes. It was a quiet afternoon when Mia boarded the North Star Serenity, a cruise traveling to the Baltic Sea, a birthday gift from her parents, something to cheer her up after she lost her best friend, Claire, in a drowning accident the year before. The ocean always made her uneasy after that, but the ship was beautiful. Grand staircases, marble halls, chandeliers glittering over the grand dining room. For the first 2 days, it felt like healing, until the elevator incident. She got in on deck 7, intending to go down to deck 4 for dinner. The elevator stopped briefly on deck 6. No one got in. Doors closed. Then it began descending. Deck 5, deck 4, deck 3, deck 2, deck 1. Then a small chime, and the number on the panel read, deck 0. There was no deck 0. She stood frozen. The doors opened. Darkness. A hallway, dimly lit with a flickering bulb, and a figure at the far end, drenched, limp, hair covering its face. She jabbed the closed door button over and over, heart slamming in her chest. The elevator didn't move. Then the lights inside went out. Complete black. She felt it. The air shift colder, wetter. The presence stepped in. The lights blinked back on. The elevator was empty, but her shirt was soaked. No one believed her. She didn't expect them to. But when she checked the cruise forum online that night, she found a post from 2 years earlier. Same ship, same elevator, different passenger, same story. And that passenger? They went overboard on the last night of their cruise. Mia didn't sleep the rest of the trip. Some stories on cruise ships don't come with explanations. They come with warnings. One passenger named Ron took a solo voyage to clear his head after his wife passed away. The crew noted how polite he was. Friendly but quiet. One night, he told the bartender a strange story. He said he saw a woman standing in his room every night at 2 a.m., wearing a nurse's uniform, smiling but not speaking. He assumed it was grief until he locked the door one night, slid the security bar, and woke up to find his door wide open and the nurse sitting at the edge of his bed. He left that cruise early, disembarking at the next port. He later wrote an open letter online, warning people not to sleep alone in cabin 4128. His note ended with, "She comes for the lonely. She smiles because she knows." There was a chef on a long-haul luxury ship that traveled from Florida to South America. His name was Miguel. He was known for being loud, full of jokes, a prankster among the crew. But Miguel changed on their 11th voyage. He told one of his co-workers that he kept hearing things in the walk-in freezer. A child giggling, a man whispering in a language he didn't recognize. The rest of the kitchen laughed, told him to lay off the horror movies. Until the morning, he didn't show up for work. They searched the ship. Eventually, they found him, locked inside the walk-in freezer. But here's the disturbing part. The internal lock wasn't broken. It was functional, meaning he could have opened it from the inside. And yet, his hands were raw, fingernails cracked, as if he'd been clawing to get out. His phone was found beside him. One video file. Corrupted. Unplayable. But it had a name. He wasn't alone. On a luxury ship called the Pearl Dawn, something strange happened during a masquerade ball. Guests danced, laughed, and drank beneath chandeliers and golden lights. Then the ship hit rough seas. Lights flickered. A chandelier above the ballroom crashed. No one was injured, but the power shorted in half the ship. When backup power kicked in, a guest noticed something odd. A woman in a black feathered mask had been standing alone the entire time. Never moved, never spoke. They thought she was just part of the theme, until someone tried to talk to her. They said her mask wasn't a mask. Her face was sunken, eyes like glass, mouth fixed in a smile that didn't match the rest of her expression. When the power finally came back on, she was gone. No one recalled her checking in. No staff remembered her entering. Later, a historian on board confirmed something chilling. That cruise route? It passed directly over the site of a 1920 steamliner wreck, a ship that sank during a formal masquerade event. The woman in the black feathered mask had been described in reports from survivors nearly a century earlier. Sometimes, the horror doesn't wait until nightfall. Adam and Jen, a newlywed couple, were on the cruise as part of their honeymoon. They took a couple's massage, watched sunsets, and danced under stars. Their cabin was tucked near the edge of Deck 8. One afternoon, while Jen was napping, Adam took a walk to the upper deck to get some fresh air. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the gray-blue ocean, just waves and sky, until he noticed something floating in the water far below. A life jacket, then a second, then a third, all drifting together in a line, as if someone had carefully placed them. He reported it to the crew, thinking maybe there was a safety issue. But when the ship looped back to inspect, there was nothing there, not even a ripple, and no life jackets were reported missing. Later that evening, as he and Jen were going to sleep, she asked him something strange. "Did you see the people in the water earlier?" He froze. "I thought it was a dream," she added. "They were just floating, watching the ship." This is the part where I ask you something personal. Have you ever looked back on a moment, on something you thought was a coincidence or just your imagination, and wondered, what if it was real? What if the moment you wrote off as sleep paralysis, as déjà vu, as a bad dream, was your mind protecting you? Because maybe knowing the truth, seeing it clearly, would break you. Maybe that's what happened to Layla. She was a guest on a week-long cruise through the Norwegian fjords. Quiet, artistic, liked to draw in her sketchbook on the balcony. The only reason anyone knows her story is because of what she left behind. She was last seen during breakfast on day 5. The next day, she was gone. No one saw her leave her room. No camera footage. Her belongings were all there, but her sketchbook, it was full, every page. Not just drawings, but frantic ones. Rushed, repetitive, one face, over and over. A man in a captain's uniform, but not the current captain. When security checked the archives, they discovered the face belonged to a man named Anders Meyer, a former cruise captain from the 1980s. He had taken his own life after the ship he commanded, this very ship, suffered an engine failure that resulted in 5 passenger deaths. They say the weight of it broke him, and somehow Layla drew his face, dozens of times, in full detail, before disappearing without a trace. On the final night of that same cruise, a storm rolled in. Wind, rain, lightning over the Black Sea. Guests were asked to stay indoors. But one man was seen walking the outer deck, shirtless, barefoot, eyes open wide, as if in a trance. When crew tried to stop him, he whispered something none of them understood. One crew member wrote it down phonetically. Later, it was translated. It was Icelandic. The phrase was, "The drowned never forget." They never found that man again. Maybe the sea takes memories from those who get too close. Maybe it returns them wrong. Eric, a bartender on the night shift, began noticing a pattern. Every Friday night around 3 a.m., he'd hear footsteps in the closed lounge. Soft, wet ones. But when he'd turn around, nothing. One night, he left a GoPro running. The footage showed chairs shifting, glasses rattling, and a shape, vague and waterlogged, moving through the room. Then the camera shorted out. When Eric quit the job, he left a message scratched under the bar counter. It said, "You're not alone. Look at the floor when it's quiet." The floorboards, if viewed under certain lighting, showed faint footprints, ones that never dried. The deeper you go into these stories, the more you begin to realize something horrifying. It's not always the people that vanish. Sometimes it's time itself. A couple reported losing an entire afternoon, left their room at 2 p.m. to walk to the buffet. The hallways looked dimmer. They chalked it up to cloudy weather. When they arrived at the dining hall, it was empty, completely closed. They checked the time. 11:47 p.m. No memory, no phone signal, and yet their watches both changed. The ship log showed their key cards entering the dining hall at 2:05 p.m. and never leaving until 11:49 p.m. Where were they, and what watched them while time stood still? The ocean doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. It waits, and sometimes it calls you back. There's a strange kind of silence that exists only at sea, not peaceful silence, the kind that presses against your ears and weighs down your lungs. Danielle felt that silence when she woke up at 2:22 a.m. Her roommate, Kayla, wasn't in bed. The balcony door was open, letting in a breeze far colder than it should have been. She stepped outside. No one. A glass of wine sat on the railing, half full. No fingerprints. She called out. No answer. Panic set in. She checked the bathroom. Empty. Called the ship's help desk. They said maybe Kayla had wandered to the lounge or spa, but Danielle knew her best friend. Kayla was terrified of being alone on boats. She wouldn't go far. Finally, security checked the cameras. Kayla was seen walking alone down the hallway to the upper deck. Then the footage glitched for 37 seconds. When it resumed, she was gone. They rewound, play it frame by frame. Gone. Danielle stayed up all night, staring at her phone, hoping for a text. She scrolled through Kayla's photos from the trip, and there, in the last one Kayla took, reflected in the glass behind her, a figure, pale, soaking wet, standing too close. Danielle swore she never saw anyone else that night. At 5:41 a.m., she received an airdrop from an unknown device. One image, blurry, blue-tinged. Kayla, waist-deep in water, eyes wide, lips slightly parted. But something was wrong. Her reflection wasn't smiling. It was screaming. Some stories are about the moment something happened, but the moment you realize it never stopped. That's what Bernard used to say. He was a janitor who had worked on cruise ships longer than most captains. Crew used to make fun of him, called him superstitious. He told them about the locked door. There's one on every ship, he said. No number, no key, no guess. Most people dismissed it until Bernard stopped showing up for work. They found him floating in the indoor pool. He'd never been in the water in his life, but his skin was pruned as if he'd been submerged for hours. His keyring was found beside the pool, missing one key. Later that week, a new janitor found a brass door at the end of deck 3B, one that didn't appear on the blueprint. The number plate was blank, and the brass keyhole scratched, like something inside had tried to get out. There's an urban legend among crew staff about mirrors on ships. Not just that they reflect more than you expect, but that some mirrors reflect differently when the ship is out at sea. Tasha, a solo traveler, took a mirror selfie in every hallway, every day. She called her floating fashion diary. At first, it was cute, until she started noticing a shape behind her in the photos. A tall, narrow shadow. No face, no color, just presence. It appeared only every third photo. She tried different mirrors, different outfits, different times. Always there. She took a video. A slow 360 turn, capturing her empty hallway. But when she played it back in the reflection, that figure was waving, not in a friendly way, in recognition. She ran, reported it. Security told her the footage was corrupted, static only. They handed her a fresh memory card and shrugged. But when she packed to leave, the mirror in her room had fogged up. One word was written in the condensation. Stay. She never did another cruise again. Have you ever spoken to someone and felt like they weren't really there? Mark, a teenager on his first trip with his parents, noticed a woman in the gift shop. Her name tag said Ivana. She never blinked, only smiled. He swore her lips moved before her voice came out, like she was being controlled. He watched her walk through the staff door. Curious, he followed, just enough to catch a glimpse. She stepped into a maintenance room. He opened it 5 minutes later. It was empty, except for an old radio, still playing static. That night, under his pillow, was her name tag, still damp. Not all encounters come with sound. Some are marked by time missing, hours gone, minutes blurred. One couple walked from their cabin to the dining hall for lunch at 1 p.m. The hallway was oddly quiet, lights dimmer than usual. When they arrived, the doors were closed. A staff member told them dinner would be served at 7 o'clock. They checked their watches. It was already 6:54. Their phones, too. Hours had passed. But neither remembered walking more than a few minutes. Security logs showed them entering the hallway at 1:03 p.m. and never leaving until 6:49. No explanation. No sightings. Their key cards worked normally, but their minds didn't. The wife later developed insomnia. She said every time she closed her eyes, she saw the hallway again, except this time it didn't end. It just kept going, and she was walking alone. There's a certain point out in the middle of the ocean where you realize you're further from land than you've ever been. And if anything happens, no one's coming. Evan was out there, working as a poolside DJ. His job was simple: music, crowd work, fun. Until one night during an event, the lights dimmed unexpectedly. Not blackout, just low enough that the guests seemed distant. Shadows moved differently. He saw someone in the pool, floating on their back. Then another, and another. 3 figures. No one else noticed them, until he looked down and saw that they weren't floating. They were standing, inches below the water, fully clothed, unmoving, eyes open, watching him. When he blinked, they were gone. He quit that night. Now, he refuses to even take ferries. Sometimes, people write these stories off as exaggerations, hallucinations, the tricks of sea legs and salty air. But how do you explain the man who walked into the crew lounge, sat at the piano, and began playing a song no one had heard before? He wore outdated clothes, pale suit, faded shoes. Security approached, but he kept playing. When they reached him, he vanished. Literally, gone. The bench still warm, and the keys still moving. If you're watching this, I want to tell you something real. These stories, they're not just for entertainment. They're for protection. The things we laugh off, dismiss, bury, they don't go away. They wait. Maybe you've seen something before, something you couldn't explain, a shadow that didn't belong, a face that didn't blink. Maybe you've told yourself it was a dream, but maybe it was the ocean remembering you. If this video made something in your chest tighten, if it made your heart race or your mind recall a detail you thought you forgot, don't let it fade again. Share your story in the comments. Don't let it die in silence, because silence is where these things grow. And if you felt something watching this, really felt it, I hope you'll subscribe. Not for me, for you. So when you see that shape again, or hear that whisper, or wake up and find water on your floor, you'll know you're not alone. You never were. And the sea, it never lets go. People disappear on cruise ships more often than you'd like to believe. Not just passengers. Crew too. And it's not always in a way you'd expect. Someone falling overboard, someone drunk, someone who ran away from life. Sometimes they vanish while brushing their teeth. That's what happened to Mateo. The security footage showed him walk into the cabin bathroom at 11:43 p.m. He never came out. His toothbrush was still wet. His shaving cream open on the counter. The mirror fogged as if he were still standing there. The cabin door never opened. No other footage. No alarms. No alerts. But there was one strange thing, written in the condensation of the mirror after it cleared. Why did you leave me? His girlfriend had died at sea 2 years prior. Same cruise line. Same room. Same cabin. He booked it on purpose, tried to get closure. Instead, he never came home. There's something about water that holds memory. Maybe it's the way it reflects. Maybe it's the way it listens. An older couple, the Wallaces, were celebrating their 40th anniversary on a luxury voyage through the Mediterranean. Everyone said they were quiet, sweet, always together. Never a cross word between them. On the third night, someone from the upper deck heard a splash. They looked over. Only one body floated. Mrs. Wallace was pulled from the sea. She was sobbing, rambling, salt in her eyes, her mouth. She kept saying, "He didn't jump. He was pulled. Something wanted him." At first, authorities assumed she was in shock. But later, during the routine investigation, they discovered something chilling. Mr. Wallace's fingerprints were found on the railing. Yes, but so were others. Unidentified prints. Long, thin, almost claw-like, not human. No passenger or crew member matched them. Mrs. Wallace was released after a psych eval, but she refused to leave the ship. She stayed on board even when the cruise ended, sat alone in the dining hall, talking to no one, only listening. She died 3 weeks later in her sleep, clutching her husband's old pocket watch. It was soaked with seawater. Staff have their own rules on cruise ships. Don't whistle near the lower decks. Never joke about the sea taking souls. And always knock before opening a storage closet. Sounds strange, but one crew member, Brian, ignored all three. He was new, young, cocky. One night, during closing rounds, he heard knocking from the freezer room. He thought someone was messing with him. He didn't knock. He just opened the door. He never made it to his next shift. Security found the freezer sealed shut, locked from the outside. No Brian, but inside, on the frozen floor, spelled out in frost, "Knock." They checked the cameras. The footage cut out for 6 minutes. When it came back, the freezer was empty. No signs of forced entry. The knocking continued for 3 more nights, until the ship docked, and then silence. Have you ever stood on a balcony in the middle of the ocean? No land in sight, no birds, no boats, just a slow, massive nothing. That's when you realize how small you are, and how big something else might be. Callie, a marine biologist, once took a solo cruise to study oceanic sound patterns. On the 4th night, she recorded a series of frequencies from her balcony. Strange, deep, repeating, almost like breathing. She posted the clip online. Most people laughed. Some said it was the engine. Some said whales. But a handful of users from obscure forums, deep-sea researchers, ex-military sonar techs, said the same thing. That's not mechanical. One even messaged her privately. They said the pattern matched deep-sea distress signals. Not human. Something older. Trapped? Maybe. Or waiting. Callie deleted her posts. She never uploaded again. When asked why, she replied only once. Because it saw me. Every cruise ship has legends. And every legend begins the same way. Someone heard something. Someone saw something. But then there's the final kind of story. The one where no one ever gets to ask what happened. Because the entire ship just disappears. It's happened before. Not often, but once. A ship called the Mariner's Solace was expected to arrive in Miami after a 5-day voyage. It never did. Radar lost it 78 miles from shore. Rescue teams found nothing. No wreckage. No flares. No oil slick. No lifeboats. Just absence. 2 months later, a fishing vessel out of Bermuda picked up a signal. A weak radio broadcast. One sentence, repeating every 13 seconds. Still here. Still dark. They won't let us leave. No coordinates. No voice recognition. Just static between each message. The broadcast stopped after 27 minutes. The Coast Guard called it a prank. But those who heard it, they couldn't forget the last line. Cut off halfway as if yanked from the air. If you find this, don't board the... And then silence. You made it to the end. And maybe your room feels a little colder now. Or the silence around you doesn't sit quite right. Maybe you'll double-check your locks tonight. Good. Because if these stories did anything, I hope they made you feel something. Fear, wonder, disbelief, curiosity. These are the things that keep us alive, that remind us we're still here, but also that we're not always alone. So if you've ever seen something you couldn't explain, if you've ever felt watched in a crowd or followed in a mirror, share your story in the comments. And if you never want to miss another tale like this, subscribe. Not because you need it, but because maybe, just maybe, someone out there is watching with you, someone listening, and maybe they're waiting for their story to be told next. Sleep well, if you can.